Hi, guys. Welcome back. There's been some interesting updates when it comes to Sheriff Steins and Judge Mullins. Let's hear what the people have to say about it.
So, please tell me that y'all have heard about this case in Kentucky, in Letcher County, with the sheriff shooting the judge, his friend of 20 years. If you haven't heard about it, A, you need to keep up with current events, and B, we're going to talk about it right now. Because, and I just heard some new information about the case. I want to hear y'all's opinion, but it puts a whole nother spin in it. Let's wash our face. Well, there's two friends, Sheriff Steins and Judge Mullins. I think that's his name.
Right.
They've been friends for 20 plus years, y'all. 20 plus years.
It's a long time.
He at one point even worked as his bailiff, he being Steins, the sheriff.
Bird.
One day in September, they're out at lunch together. According to, there's so many different sources because Steins, now that he's in custody, is being very tight-lipped. And Mullins is unalived. Having to be careful. There are several reports that while at lunch, they went together, a normal lunch, they did it often. People said it was a thing that they did often. Apparently, the judge made a comment to the effect of, should we continue this conversation in my chambers or something to that effect. To which they did return to the courthouse. So reports are saying that, like I said, while they were at lunch, the judge asked, should we finish this conversation in my chambers? When they got to the chambers, apparently there was 2 phone calls made. One from Sheriff Steins' phone and one from the judge's phone. Both calls were to the same person, Sheriff Steins' daughter. But abandon that. For some reason, they are making note of the fact that her number may have been saved in the judge's phone. There's some dispute on that. Like it was saved or it wasn't saved.
Either way.
But for some reason, it's even notable at all whether it was saved or not, which to me is indicative of something nefarious anyway. Upon shooting the judge, he was calmly taken into custody. Very calm. There are also more reports that upon being taken into custody, he said 2 things. One of the things is that he said, they're trying to kidnap my family. The other thing he supposedly said was, treat me fair. Okay? He said, treat me fair.
Treat me fair.
Those 2 things got my wheels turning in my head, okay? Because what would make a man shoot a friend of 20 years and then calmly get taken into custody and unapologetically? Like,
I think the only thing based on what she's saying could be if your daughter is on that judge's phone and maybe you know something about that judge that the rest of the people don't.
the sheriff has also been implicated in some things. Apparently, there was a young lady that was essayed in the judge's quarters. First of all, how you get all the way back to the judge's chambers? How? How you get all the way back to the judge's chambers unnoticed? And then apparently the guard that did it was not Steins, but Steins was implicated in knowing that it happened, knowing and or seeing, I'm not sure, knowing and or seeing that it happened, and then not saying anything about it. Here's my opinion. There's still information developing on this case. I've seen a couple clips of him in court so far. He looks very calm. He looks like he don't care. And he does not look like a man that is getting assaulted in prison, which to me would be very likely for a former sheriff, wouldn't you think? Unless that person did one of the cardinal things that we all know you can do as a crime in prison to not be, assaulted. And that's that most people are unaware of the unwritten rule that, like, you're kind of like a king if you go to prison defending your family or like a kid or something like that. You know what I mean? Also, that judge as well as the sheriff were on somebody's payroll. Crooked on somebody's payroll. And
See, that's what always scares me. Whenever you have a cop that does anything weird or crooked, a lot of times when you look back, you find out through the paper trail that they're affiliated with other crooked cops or crooked judges. I'm telling you, these people need to be audited regularly.
they had probably made a promise to each other, like, as long as we don't mess with each other's families or something like that. And seemed like somebody broke that rule. Because what would make you shoot your friend of 20 years after calling your daughter from your phone and his phone? They both been crooked this entire time they worked together.
Question for you venters to help me with. Is there normally a camera that's always recording in the judge's chambers? Because if not, wouldn't that be crazy if that camera was used to tape like sexual encounters and stuff, and it was actually a hidden camera, and because of the, murder happening there, maybe the police and the authorities got hold of the video and shared it with the public. But what if that was a hidden camera? So again, if you know about this and if there's normally cameras in those chambers, share with me, please.
How can you be one hell of a dude when you murdered a man?
Yeah, good point.
If you was in your right mind and you had all the evidence that you needed to prosecute this judge, why would you shoot him 8 times? I have the video of him walking into the judge's chambers. I can't post it on TikTok because obviously it will get taken down. But I have the video. Kevin has his hands up. He shoots him. Boom, boom. Kevin gets underneath his desk, puts his hands overhead. Boom, 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 boom. Mickey opens the door, goes to walk out, see Kevin's still moving. Walks back in. Boom, boom. How is that possible? How are you a great man?
It's interesting. She's talking almost like she knows these people. Normal people don't necessarily refer to these people in the first name like she is. So I'm wondering if she actually knows these people. And number two, a lot of people say Sheriff Steins is a good guy. So one way or another, something made him flip. And like she said, he wanted to make sure that there was no part of that judge around. So, wow.
Yes, in your previous life, before all that happened, you were a great man. But you also killed a great man. You are both fathers, you're both uncles, you're both sons, you're both all that. You are all that, both of y'all. They kidnapped my wife and daughter for me, but yet you'll never have a life with your wife and daughter again. So tell me, how is that a great man? Y'all need to read up on reports, watch some videos. Y'all need to do some shit.
So that was obviously from earlier before the new information came out. So she and her gut feeling were wrong.
Hey everybody, happy Thanksgiving. I want to hop on here a minute. I've had something on my mind. We've all posted and tried to keep people up to date with what's happened in our county with our sheriff and our judge. But on a more personal level, I want to just speak out to what type of guy our sheriff was. I looked back through my phone to see the exact date, and it was this past January. He sent a message, said, "Can you call me?" Well, when I called, what it was is I had a lady who I guess knew the type of work I done, and she contacted me because there's a guy in our area who had no food, no wood. This is in January. It's very cold. It was one of our snows. And did I know any way to help him? Well, he wouldn't go to a homeless shelter. He had substance use issues. He lost his all of his family, his mom, his dad, his sister. He was in pretty bad shape. Well, I reached out to some of his family. Well, he whatever the reason was, the family couldn't directly take him food or take him wood, but they would reach out to the sheriff, and he would gather food, he would gather wood, or that they gave him, or he would get it together and he would take it to this guy. He called me because he knew I was the one looking for help, and he wanted to know at which place he was at, because there was a trailer and a house up on the hill from him where he was staying. That I didn't know, but he said he would find him. So he was going out of his way to make sure that guy, he wasn't looking at him as someone who had issues with substances. He was looking at him as a human being, and he was making sure he had food and he had heat.
God, that's really interesting. So all of a sudden, you have some people in the area saying Sheriff Steins was a really great man, looked after people that were in bad shape, right? And then you have another person saying, how can you be a good person if you shoot somebody 8 times and you do it in a real wicked way where you're circling around a desk trying to hit a man as he's trying to evade you, right? And then you have another person that is saying, hey, it looks to me like there's something to do with the daughter and how Judge Mullins had the daughter's number on her phone. So we're starting to see a picture here, and I find it fascinating. What scares me is that some people in this country talk about these sundown towns and these small backwoods areas and how backwards the people can be. When you hear about people like this and these court systems and the sheriff and these bad potential things that are around them, you kind of see where they're coming. Maybe these small town people are a little too powerful for their own good.
The story of Judge Kevin Mullins and the alleged sextortion in Letcher County, Kentucky is now a national talking point. Of sex for favors in a scheme involving the judge.
All government officials have been neglecting their duties over the past 4 years, knowing they wouldn't get in trouble for it, and they took it to extremes, in my opinion. People ought to know that they're going to look back through your text messages. You know, maybe it's not too smart to be texting the victim. That's pretty stupid, but people are so brazen and they're so confident that they won't never get caught. You know, do you think Ben Fields even thought he was doing anything wrong? I think he just thought he was following the leader.
See, that's the thing that's so scary. If you're the cops and you know that the judge is in on you, and you're the judge and you know the cops are there to back you up, you can do a bunch of really messed up things and you don't have to worry about repercussions. I think that might be the reason that the sheriff decided to take out the judge, because he knew if it went to court, nothing would probably happen with this guy. There's too many connections. I'm telling you, somebody needs to study this whole justice system from top to bottom. Everybody, every state, everyone in between. We need to start looking at our judges and our lawyers and our sheriffs, and we need to root out the bad ones, because I have a feeling there's quite a few now that stuff like this is happening.
The working environment, the culture that is laid out in that organization comes from the top, baby.
Right.
That's from the top down.
Got to root that
and
out.
if you allow, you know, if you got a whole bunch of bad cops, if you got one bad cop on your roster, that's under you. You're the one that's over that. You're the one responsible for that. There's always whispers, like we've heard whispers about the judge's chambers. There's whispers about bad cops too. You know, and I mean, why would one cop cover for another bad cop if they weren't bad too? If they weren't worried about something that they had done being revealed?
This case can be linked to other deaths, in my view, and also, you know, the local community feels that way too. You know, we have good discussions about our local perspectives and not the mainstream media's spin.
I was watching News Nation earlier today, or excuse me, yesterday, and they were sharing some videotapes, or excuse me, audio tapes of a woman that said, I saw Judge Mullins having sex in his office with a girl. And this girl was part of this situation where they're taking girls that are in the jail and in the prison, and they're exchanging sexual favors for certain amenities. You know, you can have your ankle bracelet taken off. You can get a lesser bond or a lesser bail. You name it, the judge and the sheriff can make it happen. And I think it finally went too far, where the judge probably started messing with the sheriff's daughter, or even thought about it. And the sheriff wanted to nip that in the bud right away. Speaking of nipping things in the bud, why don't you go get your shoes? Let's go for a walk and nip that fat right in the bud. Hey, I want to talk to you guys about something. Yesterday, we were talking about the CEO of United Healthcare, how he got eliminated and deleted, so to speak, by this guy that they're trying to catch. All of a sudden, today, this thing is becoming the rage of the nation. It seems to be that if there was ever a such thing as a modern day Robin Hood, it's this guy. I keep reading comments on all these different videos regarding this situation, and a majority, and a great majority, don't feel like this guy is a maniac or a monster at all. They almost treat him as if he's kind of a hero. So my question to you is that a good sign or a bad sign? I know from face value, we look at this and we say, oh my goodness, this guy is like the master of denying people's claims, and because of people like this, many of us end up perishing by not getting the health care that we need and deserve, right? But at the same time, I don't really know what goes into being a CEO. Is this guy literally choosing who gets to live or perish, or is he just a piece of the machinery, so to speak, and we're kind of letting him and his loss? Is he being swept under the bus, so to speak, and are we running him over again? I've never seen a situation where people were totally okay with a guy losing his life, but that's why I'm asking you guys. You guys always seem pretty reasonable and down to earth. It's not like any of us lost sleep over this. Where do you guys stand? If you don't mind, share in the comments down below. To the CEOs and to these big corporations that, hey, we are very much aware of the incredible high amounts of pay you get. Meanwhile, there are a lot of us that are at the bottom of tier when it comes to income, and look how you treat us. And when you collectively have people that no longer care and they're okay with your demise, that really sends a message about the future that these people are going to all have to start investing some of that money into protecting themselves. And if we start becoming a society where the rich absolutely need to have a security detail, that's going to be a really warped looking future, isn't it? Could you imagine if all of a sudden the well-to-do always had to have an entourage and bulletproof glass and bulletproof vehicles? That just sounds like a nightmare scenario. So on face value, it sounds kind of cool, like, hey, this guy's a hero. But in reality, I don't consider people that take other people's lives heroes. There's gotta be a better way. And the reality is, a lot of us have health care plans where it seems like your employer takes quite a bit of money out of your paycheck, and then you find out that you have one of these plans where you have to pay a whole bunch of money before the insurance even kicks in. And then on top of that, you hear these videos like we shared yesterday where people are actually in a life and death struggle with their health because maybe they're suffering from cancer or other debilitating ailments. And then you find out that the insurance caps them and doesn't let them get the proper care that they need. So in one aspect, you have this one man taking a bullet and losing his life. But on the other hand, because of men like him making the decisions they do, you have hundreds of thousands of people that aren't able to get the care they need. The people have spoken. They are tired of this stuff. Here's the thing that's interesting to me. I'm starting to see the writing on the wall that not only are CEOs going to have to look over their shoulder in the future, but I think judges are going to as well. Because what happens when we talk about criminals outside of this criminal, right? 90% of the time when I read comments, you guys know this as well as I do, people are pissed at these people that make up our parole boards, and they're pissed at these judges. So I just have a funny feeling in the future, we're going to really need to change the way we run things in this country. And again, here's the thing that bothers me about the rich. they're never okay with $1 or $2 million a year. You and I would lose our shit if we had $1 or $2 million to work with each year. These people make 10 or 20 million a year, and then every year they give themselves an annual raise. I mean, at what point should you look at your income and say, I don't need another annual raise? And if you get raises by turning profits, and the way you make profits is by denying people their life-saving health care, then my goodness, maybe there is something to people thinking like this. I think we've kind of turned a page in this country. When the ultra-rich elitist loses his or her life, everybody in the country is now trying to locate this guy. The only difference is this time it's starting to backfire. People don't want this guy getting caught. Let me read you a couple of the comments and just know that this was a very tiny percentage of the comments out there that sounded just like it. CD Reviews says, never seen this man in my life. And then he put a little dash, most Americans denied health care. In other words, this is coming from the people that have been denied health care, and that includes a lot of us. So here's the question I have for you. If that guy was right in front of you right now, do you think you would look the other way and give him a pass?
Of ideals. Yes. Of ideals, of pursuits, of values.
That's what I like about walking. You see those two buddies walking down the street? I mean, they ran me off the sidewalk. They didn't feel like sharing, but that's what walking's all about. You get a really nice conversation going, and before you know it, you've walked a mile or two and you're at your destination. Here's the problem if you okay this murder. Then you've got to be potentially okay if somebody's okay with your murder. You might not be successful now, but does this mean that we give a green light for successful people to be bumped off? I don't think so, right? So if Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or any well-known person, you know, the Warren Buffetts of the world, the Bill Gates, if any of them are taken out, do you think that we just give them a pass from now on? Are we going to live in a world where that's okay? Because again, if there's anybody that can afford security, it's these type of individuals. Another thing that's interesting, guys, is we might all be thrown off. This might have very little to do with healthcare, and everything, including those bullet casings with those 3 magical words on them, that might be just theater so that you're distracted and you think that's what this is all about. This could easily be a spouse or somebody that hates that guy. This guy that did it might be the son or a family member of somebody that lost their life, or he could just be a bad guy that was willing to do something for, you know, $1,500. You never know. Some people are willing to do whatever for a couple of bucks. So here's my question to you. Let's say we're all wrong and this has nothing to do with coverage being denied. What if this is a slimy spouse, right? What if this is somebody that's trying to make us think it's something where we would think they're a hero, but in reality, what if it's just a bad guy being bad and it has nothing to do with what everybody's assuming it is? I've never heard of a person saying, hey, my claim got denied, so I'm going to find the owner of this business and I'm going to take him out. That happens in movies. It doesn't really happen too much in real life, at least nothing on the regular. So again, I think we're being led down this path where we want to think it's this particular guy. But again, there's something genius about this guy, and I would not be surprised if we find out that there were 2, 3, maybe even a dozen people in this part of New York that looked just like this guy. He has a typical look. Maybe that's the problem with hoodies. They make everybody kind of look the same. You know, interesting. Active 1508 says, I call BS. He died due to a pre-existing condition. Prove me wrong. See, everybody thinks this is funny.
And I do too. And again, I'm not going to lose sleep over a human being that lost his life, because we live in a world where I believe 1 million people lose their life each and every day around this world. So I'm not going to make this guy's life any more special than somebody else that goes out. But at the same time, I also don't want to lower it down to the point where it's just a joke. Because more than likely, this guy probably did have a wife, even if she was against him. He more than likely did have probably a couple kids, some nieces and nephews. We know he had to have had a mother and father, right? So, I mean, let's not just assume that because he made $10 million a year, that he was necessarily a horrible human being. By the way, some of you might have done more homework on this than I had a chance to. Sometimes CEOs take over companies. What if this guy came over from KB Toy Stores or Toys R Us or some other company? And what if he's brand new to this company? Does he deserve this if he's only been with the company for 1 year? By the way, I don't know how long he's been with them. He might have been with them for the last 20 years. But either way, was he always with them in this capacity? Was he always the CEO? What do CEOs do when they're in there on the meeting with the stockholders? Do they tell them how things are going? Or are they literally in charge of denying people services? Yesterday I was hearing that this business has been sued before because they had one of these like YouTube algorithms from hell where it was just used to deny you. By the way, I think people should sue YouTube for this algorithm from hell. No matter what you do, the algorithm's against me. Holy shit. Holy moly. You want to know something? Have you guys ever done something and you thought, hey, Lord, if you make this happen, it's all worth it? Guys, that's how I'm looking at my ASU Sun Devils. You can make me the loneliest YouTuber in the history of the world, Lord. But if you let my Sun Devils win the college championship, I'm willing to sacrifice the YouTube glory for my ASU Sun Devils to win the championship. And that has nothing to do with the money that I have bet on it, by the way. I really want this team to win. Back in the 90s, we had a quarterback named Jake Plummer. He took us to the Rose Bowl where we ended up losing at the very end of the game to the Ohio State Buckeyes. And if we had won that game, we might have been in a situation where we might have been voted into first. You remember back then, they didn't really have championship games. It was like whoever was voted at the end, which really was kind of lame. There's a lot of things that companies do out there that's kind of lame. By the way, I thought that we had passed something during the Obama years of as a president. I thought we had passed something where they weren't allowed to deny you when you have pre-existing conditions. And I thought that there were no caps and they weren't allowed to cut you off. But apparently I was wrong, because it sounds like people get denied health care many times. And I'll tell you what, why is everything so expensive at the hospital? Is it really because there's so many people that are sucking out off of our services? Right? You sometimes hear people say, hey, all these illegal aliens are coming up here and they're sucking all of our healthcare dollars out so that the citizens here can't get help. Is it really that? Because I have my doubts. The thing that irritates me is when you go into the hospital, they won't let you use your own Tylenol, but if you use their Tylenol, it's $38 a pill. I mean, at what point do you have to look at the person that's ripping you off and say, how are you broke? How are these healthcare places and these insurance companies broke when they have it set up where everybody just continually pays them? Think about this. You and I have had health insurance through our employers for the past couple of decades, off and on, right? Most of us. How many hundreds of dollars turns into thousands of dollars, turns into $10,000s of dollars? How much money have we spent? And a lot of us never even go to the hospital or the doctor. Isn't that one of the problems with American men, guys? We're always told that when we feel sick and we should go to the doctors, we avoid it. Well, if we're avoiding it constantly, why the hell does everything cost an arm and a leg? Right? To me, it doesn't make sense. And that's when people start to realize, well, hell, these CEOs are all making 7- and 8-figure incomes. Maybe that's where we need to start capping stuff. I'm not a big fan of capping anything, but my God, it is kind of sickening when you hear that the CEO, the head honcho, makes $24 million a year. This guy that lost his life supposedly was making $10 million a year. I mean, do people really have to make these sickening amounts of money? But here's my question to the CEOs. You don't have to always go in for your annual raise. I think we need to quit with this annual raise thing. And I think we need to quit with this, businesses, whether the price of goods go up or not, businesses still tend to raise the price of their products every year. So again, even with inflation, yeah, sometimes prices go up and they're forced to raise their costs, and they're forced to raise the price of a product that you buy. But guys, even if the cost of stuff went down every year, I love how people laugh like they're so funny. Oh my God, we made fun of the guy carrying the camera. Ha ha ha, real funny. Anyway, I hope you got your laugh. But anyway, check this out. If the cost of living didn't go up, if the cost of materials didn't go up, you would still have video game makers, and you would still have toy makers, and everything that you could imagine would still find its way to get more expensive the following year, because that's how these companies are. All they ever think about is, I want to get my raise. We need to get out of that way of thinking. It's just not healthy. And by the way, think about this. You live in a world where everybody gets a raise, then all of a sudden it makes it where if you're the one guy that doesn't need a raise that year, you're actually losing money. So it really is something that we need to find a better solution. No Ray Jose says, cancer meds, not covered. Drug rehab, not covered. Autism therapy, not covered. How many people's lives did that CEO ruin? Who's the madman now? So the reality is you got two madmen. Yes, that CEO might not have been the most righteous human being in the world, but in his mind's eye, he's telling himself, hey, I make a good living and I earned it. Did he fully earn 10 million? I don't think anybody deserves 10 million bucks a year. I just don't. But at the same time, I don't think he deserved to lose his life. And I don't think that this guy that took a life should be seen as a hero, because I can guarantee you, if it was your life that this guy took, I don't think your family would view him as a hero anymore. Do you? And if this guy took one of your relatives and everybody was sitting there calling him a hero, would you be excited about it? So again, there's a piece of me that says, yeah, this guy did, something for the general good. But in reality, guys, we all know that there's nothing good out of a guy doing that. This is the type of guy that if you all of a sudden broke up with him, ladies, and then you were dating a new guy and he didn't like it, he would probably eliminate you and that guy in your sleep, okay? This is a guy that if you fired him from the job that he really loved, he would probably take you out in the car parking lot. And if you looked at him the wrong way, anybody that's capable of killing anybody is capable of killing anybody. People that do that are not going to make my hero list. For all those people that do mass murders, why don't they go and take out bad people? Because they don't care. For all we know, because keep in mind, we assume this is a hit. For all we know, like I said, it just might be a ex-boyfriend of somebody that just got pissed off. It might have little to nothing to do with insurance, and those words on those bullets might be just made to fool people like you and me that are looking for a good gossip story. Is there any of you that are suspicious that that guy would write those words on a bullet? Is that some sort of hero in a novel sense? Is that some guy that's straight out of the movies? Or Is that a smart bad guy that's just trying to cover his tracks? I'd be willing to bet that it's a strong bad guy that's just trying to get us to think this has something to do with insurance. For all we know, this guy could be a millionaire himself, and this could have very little to do with it. As a matter of fact, if you were a millionaire bad guy, wouldn't you want people to think that you're some family member's, long lost son, and he lost his mom or dad to cancer? Wouldn't you want people to think that? That's how my brain thinks. I'm always thinking we're being fooled here, and I wouldn't doubt it if we are being fooled. And I'll tell you what, wouldn't it be cool if this time next year we discovered that we were fooled and that the true story is actually even more interesting than the one we're being fed? I'll tell you one thing I don't like, though. I don't like that for the countless number of people that get eliminated every day in this country, those people don't make the news. Why does this SOB make the news? Because he's worth 10 million? Because he's the CEO? Because the bad guy wrote some words on a bullet? That's where you know where you stand, ladies and gentlemen. If you and I were taken out, we wouldn't even make YouTube's front page. We would get no pub whatsoever. And there's something awful about that. Dr. Woozy said, I've never seen this level of attention, investigation, and CCTV footage for a single murder. LOL. You bring up a great point there, Dr. Woozy. That's the one I was just mentioning. It's the whole idea that if this happens to you or me, nothing happens. But if it happens to the CEO of United Healthcare, everybody on the planet hears about it. Did you guys hear that judge that got shot by the sheriff, Judge Wilkin, right? And I forget the sheriff's name. Judge Wilkin ended up having sex slaves. Did you hear about this? He ended up having a situation where they were letting women that were in trouble with the law and they didn't want to wear an ankle bracelet, they could go over to the judge and have sex with them. Judge Mullins. If you have a situation where you want to get parole instead of jail time, you just go sleep with Judge Mullins. And apparently that's why the sheriff was checking if his daughter's number was on the old judge's phone. And I'm telling you, the more that comes out, we're going to end up finding out that that judge was not a good guy. Now, this is all allegedly, so if Judge Mullins' family comes and finds me, this is just what I heard last night on News Nation. My God, tell me you guys heard about that. If you haven't, YouTube around, you'll find out. Okay, WH6266 says, a madman? ? No, that's not what any average person is thinking. They think this man is a hero. CEOs better watch out. Yeah, here's the problem. If all of a sudden we live in a world where people decide that they are going to be the law, that's not a good world that I want to live in. Is that a world you want to live in? That sounds like the old Wild West. I live in the Wild West, but I live in the modern day times. I like the idea of people being law-abiding citizens. And again, did this guy deny a claim? Or was it the United Healthcare algorithm? Was it somebody, outside of him that literally looked at this person's claim and denied them? I don't really know what goes into being the CEO of United Healthcare. I do know one thing, though. I don't like agreeing with the mind of murderers. So if a murderer says, I'm going to play God here, I think we should be against that at all costs, even if it means that the rich people get ahead of us. Because I hate to tell you guys this, win, lose, or draw, rich people are probably always gonna get ahead of us. It's kind of the way it's always been throughout history. Based on what we've learned over the past year together, do you think the future's looking brighter and better than ever? Or do you think the future's starting to look like a country and a people that are losing their way? I think it's pretty evident we're losing our way as a people, and I'm hoping that we can get it back one walk at a time. I'll see you tomorrow.